where you're off. You're matching your vibration to that which is. And that's the part that's tripping you up. The manifestation is yet to become. But the vibration already is. And if you could accept that it is, then you'd have something to match to. You see, that's what's tripping so many of you up. It's like holding myself into a vibrational frequency in order to make something happen later. And we don't want you to think about what's happening later. We want you to think in terms of what's happening now. And what's happening now is a visceral, emotional, aligning thing.
Okay.
Let's approach it in this way. Do you like the idea of being in love?
Yes.
Do you like being in love? Well, how do you define being in love? Is being in love someone fixing you a good breakfast? Hopefully not. What's being in love? What is being in love? Is being in love somebody buying you a nice house? Is being in love sharing an orderly space? What is in love? Think about it. In love is that feeling, isn't it? In love is that feeling that for many is fleeting because you didn't know how you got it and you don't know how to keep it. In other words, most people don't stay in love because they think that feeling of in love is about them and the other person, and it never was about them and the other person. Oh, the other person maybe behaved in a way that caused them to align with who they really are temporarily, but the feeling of being in love is alignment, you see. So everything that everyone wants, no matter what it is, a material object, a state of being, a pile of money, a relationship, a business, everything that anybody wants is for one reason only. They think they will feel better in the having it. And if we can convince you that it is present tense feeling that you're reaching for. So that which will become. That's the tripping point, isn't it? I'm matching my vibration to that which will become. And worse, you're doing it to make it become. Because it's the becoming that matters. And we say, no, it isn't. It isn't the becoming that matters. It's the alignment. It's the being in love that matters. Don't those who are in love tell you that? We don't need furniture. We're in love, and don't you see it? They're in love. It doesn't matter. They don't care where they are. They don't matter who's watching them. Jerry and Esther were on the 11th floor watching a couple making out in a glass elevator. It was so great to see. They had no idea. The world was not even part of their awareness. They were in love, you see. Because the vortex has already assembled all cooperative components, and that feeling of dragging that heavy wagon behind is only the indicator that you're not a cooperative component yet. In other words, haven't you ever had a day when everything just went right for you? It was like somebody had called ahead and smoothed your trail. And nothing makes Esther more unhappy than to find out that someone in her life has called ahead to smooth her trail. She wants to smooth her own trail. She wants the vortex to smooth her trail. You see, and so do you. You represent humandom very well. In other words, it's the way most people are approaching it, and we're here to help you figure out what it is. In other words, doesn't it seem perfectly logical to anyone that when they're getting a breakfast that isn't what they've asked for in a world that is as established as this one is, that you should be able to just make a phone call and get it right? Doesn't that just make the most logical sense in the world? And we say, but in a vibrational world, it's not logical, because you can't set your radio dial on 6:30 a.m. and hear what's being broadcast on 98.7 FM. The frequencies have to match up. So what this conversation is about, we're just wanting to help you to get oriented into this vibrational world where feeling is everything. Let us give you something that will soothe that just a little bit. First of all, all of these new consciousness that are coming forth. We're talking about flora and fauna and the baby humans. All of them that are coming forth are coming from this perspective of all that you've put into the vortex. So they are tuned in, tapped in, turned on, cable ready to rock and roll. In other words, they're coming in and they're knowing. And that's huge. You talk about a generation gap, we call it a vibrational gap. They're coming knowing things that you've put into your vortex that you haven't allowed yourself to know. They're coming in knowing it, you see. And then there are those like you who are deliberately moving yourself into the vortex. Then there are those who have just figured it out that they want to feel good. In other words, everything that every single person does, everything that every single person wants, whether it's a material object or a pile of money or a relationship, everything that everyone wants is because they believe they will feel better in the having of it. And then you have those like us. As you summon us, we come and we explain, and when you're ready, you hear, you see. We don't think that your world is as out of whack as you are seeing it. And we wouldn't make a big deal over a little bit of negative emotion if we were standing in your physical shoes. But we do agree with you. It should feel better to you. Life should be good to you. You should get what you want. You shouldn't have to suffer. Things should unfold. You should feel your power. We want you to know your worthiness. And we think that is the biggest, boldest, most accurate answer to the question that you're posing here. People have lost their sense of worthiness because of the distorted story that has been told to them about who they are. This conversation is not helpful. In other words, you are continuing that story. No matter what the reason is that you're focused upon that, you're not focused upon what's in the vortex as you tell such a story. So you want to get into the vortex so that you can radiate the knowledge that you want others to find. And this is the time of awakening, meaning this is the time when all who are looking will find. We want to find a way of helping you to feel the enthusiasm that we feel when your life causes you to put something into your vortex and then you manage to get in there where it is. That's the thrill of life. And that's the nugget that everyone is looking for. Mm-hmm. We want to convince you that the perfect world isn't one where everybody knows what you're coming to know and everybody is just this really dynamic, deliberate creator. That's not the perfect world. The perfect world is the world you've got. The perfect world is the world of contrast and balance. The perfect world is the world that stimulates new desire, and some line up with it and some don't. In other words, the perfect world is the world of choice. It's the world of knowledge. And we know that when you find a way to find happiness, that you want to tell everybody about it. But the thing that's tricky about that is somebody who's not in the vicinity of happy can't hear you. And so then you want to say, well, something's screwy with the system. And we say, no, it's not screwy with the system. There might be something screwy with people's ability to understand where they are in relationship to who they are. That's screwy. It's screwy that a mother welcomes a child into the world and then convinces the child that the child should care more what mother thinks than about how the child feels. That's screwy. But don't you notice that as children grow, that they begin reaching for more, and that if they care about knowing that they'll find their way? We cannot assume that people in various religions haven't found something meaningful that is working for them. In other words, we are not for a moment here to suggest that the way that we are explaining all of this is the only way that it can be explained. We understand the laws of the universe, but there are plenty of people who are outside the vortex, who are living, who have put things into their vortex, who find things in religions that you might not find that might help them to close their gap, you see? There's not one right way of living. There are so many right ways of living. So we want you to understand that we have the glorious experience of getting to witness, as you sit in the room or as you sit in the chair, both vibrational aspects of you and the relationship they have to one another. And we stand unequivocally, completely inside your vortex of creation. We stand in solidarity with the wholeness of who you are. We will not come out of your vortex to commiserate with you just because you're out of your vortex. We will stand in your vortex knowing that you very much want to be in there too, and we will use every possible thing that we can find to coax you into the vortex. But the most important thing that we want you to understand is You have to make the decision that you want to be there. You have to understand that the vortex exists and that the larger part of you is there. And there's one last thing. You must pay the sacrificial price of joy. You have to care. You have to care that you feel good before anything that we say or any guidance that we help to awaken within you will have any meaning for you. You are the creator of your experience, and you create with the focus that you find. So it is our desire to help you to realize that you can focus into this vortex, and you can bring a manifestational evidence of everything that you want about quickly. But you can't focus on what is and on this vortex of creation at the same time. And that's mostly what we're going to be talking about here today. How you can find the vibration of what's going on in the vortex. And the biggest thing that trips you up is that you are using your physical senses in such a magnificent way in order to define or explain or even sometimes to explore your physical reality, that you talk in terms of what you see and what you hear and what you smell and taste and touch. It's a tactile, physical reality, this what-isness of this reality. Where this vibrational reality that we're describing, you can't see it because it hasn't manifested in that way. You can't hear it, you can't smell it or taste it or touch it, but you can know it by the feeling of it. In other words, if we can get you addicted to the feeling of well-being, then you can feel your way into the vortex. And once you feel your way in and you establish a chronic pattern of thought that allows you to linger there, then full view, full manifestation comes next. There's a little tripping point on explaining that step to you for this reason. You don't really get it, and it's all right, but you don't really get it. That this physical world that you can see and hear and smell and taste and touch is only vibrational interpretation. And most of you don't get it, that the only difference between this vibrational reality that we're describing and the reality that you are so enamored with is that the physical reality has come into fuller focus for you. If you can stay with us just for a moment and accept that it's only a vibrational adjustment between the vibrational version and the manifested version. In other words, to you, sometimes it feels like, well, this is reality. And Abraham's talking about fairy tales and Never Never Land and other worldly things and non-physical stuff. And sure, I might feel better if I focus into their fairyland, but how does reality fit with that? And we want you to understand that reality is an extension of the same thing. We're not kidding you. You can focus yourself into vibrational sync by feeling your way into the vortex. And if you will, every time you find yourself in there, milk it longer until you have made a concrete habit of sustaining the high-flying, good feeling, secure feeling, vital and alive feeling, love feeling, well-being feeling of being in the vortex. If you will make those emotions chronically your own, the manifestations will be so fast on the heels of that people who are watching you will say, what magic have you found? And your response from inside the vortex will be, it's the promise that we all held when we came forth. It's the promise that we are the creator of our own experience and that we get to live the full manifestation of it here. The reason that so many humans are sort of out of whack with that is because you've been making an art of resistance instead of an art of allowing. That's all that it is. You've practiced your resistant thoughts more than you've practiced your allowing thoughts. It's easier to be mad and be ornery and make lists of what you don't want than it is to feel good and be happy and make lists of what you do want. You've been facing the reality and you've been leaning resistant rather than leaning allowing. And that's why we're here, to remind you of who you really are and how it all works. So